Nearly 9 months after his conviction, R&B singer R. Kelly will finally learn his fate today. His legal team says he deserves no more than 10 years behind bars. Kelly has been hammered for his role in the abuse of numerous women and minors for nearly 3 decades. eNCA correspondent William Denselow joins me now live from New York with details on this just ahead of the sentencing. William, good afternoon South African time. I can say good morning your time there. First, can you just remind our viewers here in South Africa, just a quick recap of the charges that R. Kelly was found guilty of?
Absolutely, happy to. So R. Kelly was essentially found guilty back in September on 9 charges, 8 relating to sex trafficking charges, violating what's known here in the US as the Mann Act. That's essentially guilty of bringing women across state lines for sexual exploitation. Another charge of racketeering. Now, how that fits into what exactly R. Kelly is accused of? Well, R. Kelly was found guilty of essentially being the ringleader of a group and a scheme to recruit young girls, young boys on some occasions, and women, essentially to bring them into R. Kelly's orbit for him to sexually abuse them. We heard during the trial multiple people, predominantly women, a few men as well, recounting how they were subject at the hands of R. Kelly to psychological, physical and emotional abuse. So that is essentially what the trial was centred on, and as you rightly mentioned, prosecutors are calling for R. Kelly to get at least 25 years behind bars.
So is that the okay, so I was just going to ask, how much prison time could R. Kelly find? So you're saying there's a call for 25 years?
That's absolutely right. Prosecutors are calling for 25 years to be an absolute minimum going forward. They say that he acted essentially callously with no regard for the victims. They said during the trial, according to the prosecution, that R. Kelly essentially used his position as a prominent R&B singer and used his fame and influence to create this orbit around him. And that is why prosecutors say he should be given such a heavy prison sentence. He's, of course, 55 years old, so potentially, if the judge rules with the prosecution, he could be spending the rest of his life behind bars. Now, the defence team say that he should be getting substantially less than that. They don't want to see him getting any more than 10 years behind bars. Their argument is that he himself was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. That should be taken into consideration.
So both sides, his defense and the prosecution, are calling for some jail time. I don't know how the system works in America. Here, people tend to appeal sentences that they believe to be harsh after they were delivered. If he would get that, if the judge would agree with prosecution, hand down a heavier sentence of 25 years, what are chances of him appealing the sentence?
Well, of course, in the United States, every person certainly has the right to an appeals process. So it'll be interesting to see whether that will be a course of action that R. Kelly will pursue. Of course, we saw just 24 hours earlier, I should say, we saw with Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team, also here in New York, after she was sentenced to some 20 years behind bars for sex trafficking in connection with her association with Jeffrey Epstein. Her legal team said right after that sentence was handed down here in the city that they would be seeking an appeal. So it'll be interesting to hear from R. Kelly's legal team whether that is an avenue they will be pursuing.
Okay, what will this sentencing mean for his music? I mean, is there any idea? Because I understand he's also facing charges in other parts of the US.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the case with R. Kelly, there were rumblings and rumours about him having sex with underage girls back as early as the 1990s. Then in 2002, he was indicted on child pornography charges. About 6 years later, those charges against him were dropped. So there have certainly been these accusations for nearly 30 years now. But of course, it's only until recently that that's really had an impact when it comes to the public discourse and making consumers think very differently about whether to listen to his music, whether these whether his songs will be played on the radio. Of course, they are certainly not being played since this trial really began in earnest, certainly since his conviction. So this will certainly have a lasting impact. And you mentioned other trials. Well, this isn't the last that R. Kelly will be facing a court of law in the United States. In August, he faces obstruction and child pornography charges in the city of Chicago. He also faces sexual abuse charges in the states of Minnesota as well as Illinois as well.
Thank you very much, William Denselow in New York for us. Ahead, of course, of the sentencing today of R&B star R. Kelly.